Yes, can you all hear me?
Great.
We can. Just give us
Sure.
one moment to get the live stream going, and then we can get started.
Okay, sounds great. Sorry that mine didn't work this morning.
Life happens to all of us that way. We have a call that is an 828 number that ends in 27. It's calling in. Who is
I
that?
think that's John.
That's John.
me, that's me.
So you're on your phone, Mr. Blackburn?
Sadly, yes, but I can read the script.
Okay.
Mr. Blackburn, we're all set. It is your meeting, Chair.
Okay, great. Thank you, sir. I call this meeting of the panel of the North Carolina State Board of Education's Education, Innovative, and Charter Schools Committee, EICS, to order. The purpose of today's meeting is to hear an appeal by Children's Village Academy from the May 6, 2024 decision of the Charter Schools Review Board to not renew Children's Village Academy's charter. Today is Monday, June 3rd, 2024. The time is 10:07 a.m. The hearing is being conducted electronically via text. I am John Blackburn. I will serve as chair of the panel hearing today. The other panel members present online to hear the appeal today are my state board colleagues, Ms. Jill Kamnitz and Mr. Wendell Hall. All three of us are members of the State Board of Education and have been duly appointed by the chairman of the State Board of Education to this panel to hear this matter on behalf of the full State Board of Education and make a recommendation to that body. I want to welcome those in attendance and those in listening to the proceedings. Panel members, you are reminded that it is our duty to avoid conflicts of interest and the appearance of conflicts of interest as we handle the work of this appeals panel. I want to ask each panel member if you're aware of any conflict that might disqualify you from hearing this matter or are aware of anything else that would keep you from fairly and impartially deciding this appeal. Ms. Kamnitz, do you have any conflicts of interest in this matter?
No, I do not.
Can you be fair and impartial in this matter?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, do you have any conflicts of interest in this matter?
No.
Can you be fair and impartial in this matter?
Yes.
Thank you. And I do not have any conflicts of interest and state for the record that I can be fair and impartial in this matter. Next, I would like to take a few minutes to share the procedure for the hearing today. Each side will be given up to 30 minutes to present its case and may reserve up to 5 minutes of that time for rebuttal following the main presentation. The panel members may ask questions of the parties either during or after the presentations. At the conclusion of the presentation, the panel will deliberate and vote on a recommended decision to be presented to the State Board of Education at its June 5th, 6th, 2024 meeting. At its June 5th, 6th, 2024 meeting, the State Board of Education will make a final decision on this matter. Can I ask those other folks that are SBE or DPI representatives to introduce themselves?
This is Ashley Becerra, the Director of the Office of Charter Schools.
This is Allison Schaefer. I'm General Counsel for the State Board of Education.
Stephen Walker, Legal Counsel for the Charter Schools Review Board.
And this is Ruben Fafari. I'm Director of Board Policy and Operations for the State Board of Education, and I'm here with Lou Martin in our office's team.
Bruce Friend, Chair of the Charter School Review Board.
Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you being a part of us today. Now I'd like to invite the Charter School Review Board to make its presentation as to the reasons for its decision that is the subject of this appeal. And
Mr.
Allison will keep the time.
Okay, Mr. Blackburn, could you ask the school people to introduce themselves? I'm sorry.
Oh, sure, that'd be great. Yes, please. I'm sorry.
Yes,
The
Jessica
folks
Jones.
from-
Wilma Troublefield. Jessica Jones, Principal of Children's Village Academy. Wilma Troublefield.
Ms. Troublefield, we're having trouble hearing you. Please, could you speak up or speak more directly?
I'm Wilma Troublefield. I'm the chairperson for the Board Children Village Academy Board of Directors.
Okay.
I'm Jonathan Vogel. I am counsel for Children's Village Academy.
And hello,
Welcome all of you.
Ms. Clark, I think you had.
Yes, I was just gonna say good morning. I am Peggy Carr Wilson. I am an honorary member of the board.
And what does that mean? Are you no longer on the board?
Our bylaws say that I can serve as a ex officio member, honorary member. No voting privileges.
Okay. Welcome all of you. And now I would ask the Review Board to make its presentation to us for its decision on the subject of this appeal.
Okay, good morning.
Ashley?
This is Ashley Vaquero, Executive Director of the Office of Charter Schools, and I will be presenting on behalf of the Charter Schools Review Board and its decision to non-renew the charter of Children's Village Academy. This matter includes findings from multiple DPI divisions. So what I've provided to all parties and posted online publicly on eBoard is a proposed findings of fact. I'll kind of use that as our roadmap. And then within each section, there is a reference to an attachment. So that will kind of help the panel members know where to direct their attention. I'll begin with a brief background summarizing the major findings during the 2-year renewal process for which CVA took part in. And then I'll conclude with findings as of the May 6, 2024 CSRB decision to non-renew, which will then hopefully provide a clear synopsis of the reasons for non-renewal. So Children's Village Academy, also referred to as CVA, is a charter school operating in Lenoir County, currently serving grades K to 8, with a current charter agreement effective date of July 1st, 2017. Its original charter was effective July 1st, 1997. The charter for CVA contains several binding provisions, including grounds for termination. Grounds for termination include, but are not limited to, failure to meet the requirements for student performance, failure to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management, violation of law, violation of any conditions, standards, or procedures set forth in the charter, or other good cause warranting non-renewal. The current charter agreement is set to expire June 30th, 2024. North Carolina General Statute 115C-218.6 governs the review and renewal of charters and requires the Charter Schools Review Board to review the operations, including academic, financial, and operational, of each charter school prior to the expiration of its charter, and to either renew that charter up to a period of 10 years or to non-renew. The renewal process for each charter school takes place over a period of 2 years and begins with a submission of a letter of intent to renew and a self-study. This requirement is outlined in North Carolina Administrative Code. CVA submitted its letter of intent to renew on July 8th, 2022, thereby initiating the renewal process. It submitted its renewal self-study on November 28th, 2022. A renewal visit from the Office of Charter Schools took place May 3rd, 2023, with consultants Jenna Cook and Melanie Rackley attending on behalf of the Office of Charter Schools. The renewal visit, per any other renewal visit, consists of a tour of the school, brief classroom observations, and multiple interview groups, including staff, board members, administration, and parents. The renewal interview with board and administration was attended by only 2 board members. One attended in person and the other attended virtually. Following the May 2023 renewal site visit feedback was provided to the school and included the following notes. That the board consider adopting a formal evaluation tool for the school's administrator as a best practice. That the board consider yearly governance training for all members. During the visit, it was concerning that the board chair was not able to speak to board-related items such as the board bylaws, the general format of a board meeting, or procedures such as closed session. OCS staff also recommended adding board strengthening exercises to scheduled meetings throughout the year. They requested that the school verify policies specifying that they may not accept employees or volunteers from the state board revoked license list, that they update the school's website with approved board meeting minutes, and they ensure that the website explicitly states the exact date, time, and location of board meetings. Following the renewal self-study and site visit interviews, staff began the process of compiling data to present to the review board during the renewal visit or renewal review of the charter school. On October 6, 2023, Children's Village Academy was sent via email a request to report on the school's status academically, financially, and operationally at the regularly scheduled November meeting of the review board. This presentation is required of all renewal schools which do not statutorily receive a 10-year renewal. Within this invitation, it was requested that the board of directors and the administration of CVA attend, and additional guidance was given, including that the school leader and board chair should conduct the presentation, and it is recommended that a majority of the board be present. Additional school staff may also attend. This information is provided to all that are up for renewal each year before the review board. At the first renewal meeting, November 7th, 2023, Jenna Cook, an OCS consultant, presented the school's academic history. The academic history included the following: a 2019 school performance grade of an F, 22 was a D, 23 was a D. 2019 academic growth did not meet, 22 met growth, 23 met growth. The school is considered continually low performing. The 2019 grade level proficiency was 32%. 2022 grade level proficiency was 40.7%. And the 2023 proficiency was 37.8%. The 2019 academic comparability was -16, meaning there are 16 points under the LEA. The 2022 comparability was +1 point over the LEA. And the 2023 comparability to the LEA was -4. Ms. Cook presented the school's compliance history, and she stated that the API, Office of Federal Programs, had requested additional documentation and would be giving a report in December. In addition, school's business services had also requested additional time to present its report in December. At the November meeting, the CVA principal, Ms. Jessica Jones, presented the school's presentation to the review board. The review board then had a chance to ask questions of the school and its board, and the head of school did the majority of the speaking during this presentation. The presentation is attachment 2 and is included on eBoard. At the following regularly scheduled Charter Schools Review Board meeting, December 12th, 2023, federal program staff presented its first findings related to CVA and the 21st Century Community Learning Centers grant. I'll refer to that as a 21st Century grant. Several areas of noncompliance were noted and questions from the review board were addressed. In addition, federal program staff also presented findings related to a fiscal review of CVA's summer mini grant program. Several areas of concern were identified related to expenditures, and questions from the review board were addressed. All of these meeting minutes are posted online and live streamed for the public and for public record. The review board then directed questions to the head of school, Ms. Jones. Mr. Friend asked about internal controls for writing checks, and Ms. Jones shared that the program director and finance director handle all checks, and she does not receive reimbursements or invoices related to 21st century grants. Ms. Shirley McFadden from DPI School Business presented findings related to allegations received from the state auditor and other allegations reported directly to DPI in which a CVA board member allegedly misused 21st century grant funds for personal use. Ms. McFadden shared the findings and recommendations, and the questions from the board were addressed. On December 18th, 2023, Children's Village Academy was placed on governance noncompliance cautionary status pursuant to administrative code for the following reasons: failure of the board to conduct meetings in accordance with schedule in the bylaws or the approved charter application, and failure to adopt the following policies regarding the operation of the charter school, including personnel, disciplinary, and parental grievance policies. In addition, bylaw violations, including failure to follow the open meetings law, failure to maintain public records, to implement a conflict of interest policy, and failure to adhere to the rules of parliamentary procedure. On January 3rd, 2024, Ms. Cook notified Mrs. Jones and Ms. Troublefield, the CVA board chair, via email that based on the compliance and financial data presented at the December Charter Schools Review Board meeting, that OCS was adjusting CVA's renewal placement to a non-renew or assumption. At the January 8th, 2024 regularly scheduled meeting, Ms. Cook informed the review board members that after reviewing all relevant documents, OCS notified CVA of a change in OCS recommendation and were now recommending a non-renewal due to one, material violations of the conditions, standards, and procedures of the charter, and failure to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management. In a letter dated January 17th, 2024, CVA responded to being placed on governance noncompliance. The school acknowledged that school documents, including board meeting minutes, were damaged in severe flooding in previous years. The school also committed to implement corrective measures such as revising policies, providing board training, signing annual verification of review of the conflict of interest and nepotism policies, and ensuring that all minutes are posted in an orderly manner. The review board and OCS received a letter dated February 2nd from CVA addressing the key issues and the corrective actions related to the DPI findings. At the February 5th, 2024 regularly scheduled meeting, Susan Brigman, she's the DPI section chief for specialty programs, presented an update regarding CVA. Ms. Jones and Mr. McCaffrey, a representative from an accounting firm, presented information regarding outstanding loans. Mr. McCaffrey outlined the new loan agreement, and Ms. Jones stated that CVL will continue to partner with the firm to improve financial processes. Mr. Harper, the board treasurer, noted that the board has a commitment to fixing their financial house. Ms. Jones then addressed concerns related to governance, and questions from the review board were addressed. On March 15th, 2024, OCS removed CVA from governance noncompliance, cautionary status with stipulations, including ensuring all meeting minutes were posted to the school's website in a timely manner. On March 26, 2024, a settlement agreement was entered into by and between CVA and DPI related to the DPI findings of the 21st Century Summer Mini Grant Program and unallowable cost. The settlement agreement included obligations that CVA would withdraw any appeal related to allegations of misspent federal funds in the February 5th letter, that it would not bring further appeals related to the findings of misspent federal funds in either the February 5th or December 11th letters, and that within 30 days, it would repay $152,050.13 of the federal funds identified in the letter. The review board and OCS received a letter from CVA dated April 3rd, assuring the review board and OCS that the school had implemented nearly all of the DPI recommendations. At the April 8th scheduled review board meeting, Ms. Cook reviewed the academic information for CVA and noted that there were federal programs and school business reports previously related to financial noncompliance. Ms. Brigman from federal programs provided an update regarding CVA, including a settlement related to the fiscal desk review. Questions from the review board were addressed. Ms. Shirley McFadden then provided an update for school business stating that CVA is running at a deficit, has very little cash on hand, and had a drop in ADM. Questions from the review board were addressed, including concerns about whether CVA would be able to repay the state the amounts settled in the settlement agreement. Following the April 8th meeting, DPI was also made aware of additional allegations against CVA, which prompted both school business and federal programs to conduct unannounced site visits at the school. On May 3rd, 2024, Shirley McFadden from DPI School Business sent a letter to Ms. Wilma Troublefield, the CVA board chair, and Jessica Jones, the CVA principal, outlining allegations received in April 2024. Key findings were outlined and required CVA actions were shared. These findings included noncompliance with FMLA, the Family Medical Leave Act, noncompliance with the Fair Labor Standards Act, and IRS regulations. Employee status was improperly changed to independent contractors and ineligible contractors on the North Carolina State Health Plan. These are outlined in attachment 24. Corrective action was due June 2nd. At the May 6th, 2024 regularly scheduled review board meeting, Ms. Cook presented information to the review board which outlined a timeline of the compliance concerns known to OCS. These are in attachment 25, but to summarize, they're as follows. In October 23, OCS was made aware of both the federal and school business compliance concerns. In December 2023, federal programs presented their findings with the 21st Century Grant Program to the review board. In December 23, school business presented their findings from the investigations for the reports given to both the Office of the State Auditor and directly to DPI. December 2023, CVA was placed on governance noncompliance cautionary status from OCS. February 2024, federal programs issued 2 letters with unresolved findings for both the 21st Century Program and the Summer Mini Grant Program. The question cost totaled $162,597.91. This was later settled to repay $152,050.13. In March 2024, CVA was removed from governance noncompliance, and additional questions from the review board were addressed. In April 2024, DPI was made aware of additional allegations concerning CVA, and subsequently, both federal programs and school business conducted site visits with findings. On May 6, 2024, at the regularly scheduled review board meeting, Ms. Susan Brigman, the section chief for specialty programs at federal programs, reviewed the fiscal year 2023 21st Century Summer Mini Grant requirements, the timeline and compliance issues related to CVA. Findings from this monitoring were for indicators 1.2, 1.3, and 3.1 have been unable to be resolved after correspondence requesting additional documentation dated August 14th, 2023, and follow-up emails dated September 6th, 2023, September 28th, 2023, and October 25th, 2023. And these are outlined in attachment 25. Ms. Brigman then shared an update related to the comprehensive program monitoring review. In March 14th, CVA received a closing letter as all programmatic findings related to the comprehensive monitoring review have been addressed. However, the fiscal findings remain unresolved. Ms. Brigman addressed findings from an unannounced site visit on April 9th, 2024, which continued to show issues with the 21st Century Program attendance documentation and whether minimum operating hours were being met. DPI Program Director Wendy Buck walked Ms. Jones and Ms. Powell from CVA through the process for documenting attendance. Another unannounced visit on April 16th, 2024, revealed additional issues with attendance management by someone who is no longer employed by CVA. Additionally, concerns were noted regarding the length of the school day and noncompliance with the after-school snack distribution. Ms. Brigman then shared the fiscal year 23 21st Century Summer Mini Grant fiscal timeline, which is as follows. The fiscal review was during the week of September 18th, 2023. Initial review was of July 2023 expenditures only. A follow-up letter was sent on October 16th, 23. Follow-up letter number 2 sent on November 14th, 2023. A findings with question cost letter was sent on December 1st, 2023. And a final follow-up letter was issued on February 5th, 2024. Additional findings in the final letter issued February 5th, 2024. CVA appealed the final action and a hearing was scheduled for March 28th, 2024. However, prior to that hearing, a settlement agreement was executed on March 26th. On May 6, 2024, at the regularly scheduled review board meeting, Ms. Shirley McFadden from Business Systems and Internal Controls School Business presented a summary of key findings in the follow-up regarding the school. This is outlined in attachment 26. They are as follows. Allegations were received at DPI in April 24 where some staff were paid via 1099 status. 2 independent contractors were enrolled in the state healthcare plan. A CVA board member misused 21st century grant funds for personal use. DPI received allegations through the state auditor regarding conflict of interest. A draft of governance and school board policies dated January 2024 was submitted by CVA and addressed a definition of financial interest. Draft 21st century financial policies and procedures address conflict of interest. However, this is not addressed for regular financial processes and procedures. There were understated liabilities resulting in misstated financial statements. There was inadequate documentation for a loan from a board member. There was inadequate documentation to substantiate startup cost treatment. There was invalid voting procedures related to conflict of interest. There were unallowable costs charged to state and federal funds. Utility bills paid for property outside contract rental dates. Unallowable costs were red flags of indicators of fraud, waste, or abuse. And there was ineffective internal control structure. This was presented at the May 6th review board meeting and questions from the review board were addressed. On May 6, 2024, the school CVA was permitted to present to the review board, at which time they shared resolutions of DPI recommendations, their end of year operational plan, and repayment of a proposal to repay the amount owed to DPI in installments. Additional questions from the review board were addressed. The review board discussed the renewal term and unanimously voted to non-renew the charter. The review board's decision to non-renew is consistent with statute, which states that the state board may renew the charter for a period of less than 10 years or not renew the charter if a charter school does not meet the criteria for a 10-year renewal term. The review board's decision to non-renew is consistent with statute, which allows the review board and the state board on appeal to terminate, not renew, or seek applicants to assume a school's charter if any of the following apply. Failure to meet the requirements for student performance, failure to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management, violations of law, violations of conditions, standards, or procedures of the charter, 2/3 faculty instructional support requested, or other good cause identified. At the May 6th Charter Schools Review Board meeting, Mr. Friend made the motion that the review board not renew Children's Village Academy based on the opinion that they have failed to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management, as evidenced by the school having multiple findings from DPI's monitoring of compliance, including a lack of internal controls. Also, a material violations of the conditions, standards, or protocols set forth in the charter and state and federal law and regulation, including the school's failure to follow federal guidelines from the Office of Federal Programs. The charter is set to expire June 30th, 2024, and should this non-renewal be upheld, the Office of Charter Schools will assist the school in its closing procedures. And that concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Picaro. You will have some time at the end of the presentation for rebuttal.
Ms. Picaro has approximately 10 minutes remaining on her time.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. At this point, I'd like to invite the Children's Village Academy to make its presentation as to why it believes that the Charter Review Board's decision not to renew Children's Village Academy's charter was in error. So I'll turn it over to the Children's Village Academy folks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me just fine?
Can, thank you.
Terrific. Very good. You see, I've got a PowerPoint presentation up on the screen. I'll ask our operations folks to advance the slide when I'm ready. I'll just say next slide. Thank you. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and Mr. Hall, good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to present to this committee. My name is Jonathan Vogel, and I represent the Children's Village Academy, or CVA as we'll call it, in connection with this hearing. and with your recommendation to the full board for a charter renewal, I will continue to represent the school as its board attorney and day-to-day operations counsel. We haven't met before, so let me tell you a little bit about our firm. Our law firm focuses almost exclusively on education law matters. We have represented charter schools or proposed charter schools, and I have recently served as board attorney for 2 of the largest school districts in North Carolina. As a member of the NCSBA, we regularly attend conferences and webinars of the North Carolina Council of School Attorneys. Previously, I was the Deputy General Counsel, the United States Department of Education, and I also worked at the United States Department of Justice at both the Civil Rights Division in Washington, D.C., and as a federal prosecutor in Charlotte, assigned to prosecute financial fraud cases. Before launching an education law firm 5 years ago, I was a government investigations partner at McGuire Woods, one of the largest law firms in the state, and I worked in the legal departments of Bank of America and also a private college. Next slide, please. We seek a 3-year renewal of CVA's charter because it is an important school to families and students in Lenoir County, and it is achieving student academic outcomes for minority students who are high poverty and who live in high crime areas. The school is an oasis of student achievement within a challenging academic desert. CVA is the only charter school in Lenoir County, the only one. With the expansion of opportunity scholarships, or private school vouchers as some call them, if CVA's charter is not renewed, then the families who have chosen CVA as an educational option for its academics and small class sizes, among other reasons, will likely take their vouchers, exit the public school system, and never return. Remember, these are families who already determined that their children required an alternative to the school district. Without CVA, they're going to private school. That being said, CVA must improve its financial, operational, and board governance compliance. There is no debating that point. But that is fixable. Plenty of organizations have compliance issues that require remediation. 2 of you on the committee were local school board members, and 1 of you was a college board member. You've heard about compliance lapses, and you've made fixes through policy, procedures, personnel, or otherwise. Mistakes happen, but there must be oversight and reform. It requires CVA to put in the work, starting with changes at the very top. CVA needs new board members who understand finance and compliance. With proposals from Charter Success Partners to manage the financial internal controls, and from our law firm to counsel the school on board governance and day-to-day operations, CVA will improve its compliance shortcomings. The important thing is to not lose sight of the goal here, which is to ensure that the committee and the board are facilitating the provision of a sound basic education for students in Lenoir County. Next slide, please. I've set forth an outline for this morning's presentation. We'll call the next 4 slides the legal slides because they focus on the task at hand. We recognize that the committee has its own State Board of Education attorney to counsel the committee on whether the committee can legally recommend a 3-year charter renewal. But it's important that we advocate to the committee that yes, the committee can legally do so, and under the circumstances here, the committee should recommend a 3-year renewal. Next, we'll cover what we call the academic outcome slides. While the Office of Charter Schools presentation was heavy on describing areas of noncompliance, it was light on describing CVA's academic outcomes. We think you'll be surprised by what you hear. And remember, CVA is the only charter school in Lenoir County. Finally, we'll acknowledge the areas of noncompliance. though not before bringing to your attention that the renewal process had culminated in a recommendation for CVA's 3-year charter renewal. There was a recommendation for CVA's 3-year charter renewal before there was an abrupt change by the Office of Charter Schools. Findings of noncompliance suddenly became reasons for non-renewal, rather than simply cautionary status notifications. Yet CVA is not dismissing the findings of noncompliance. As noted earlier, reforms are needed, and they are needed now. We'll conclude our presentation with our checklist for reforms. Next slide, please. The most important legal point we want to make to you is this first one. The State Board of Education has the authority to renew CVA's charter for 3 years. Section 218.6 states that a charter will be renewed for 10 years unless one of the 3 conditions apply, and if one of the conditions applies, then you can renew the charter for a period less than 10 years. To be sure, the board can also choose to not renew the charter, but as we will show you, non-renewal is not warranted where, as here, the school is serving its students academically, especially compared to the school district, which, by the way, is a low-performing district. There is another statute, Section 218.95, that provides authority to not renew a charter when any of the various conditions listed in that section apply, and the OCS presentation focused on that statute quite a bit. We obviously don't deny that the board could choose to not renew the charter. Rather, we're informing the committee that under Section 218.6, which is pictured here, the board legally can renew the charter for a period of less than 10 years despite the existence of one of those things. And this point is not disputed by OCS. Next slide, please. Specifically, we seek a renewal of 3 years because it comports with DPI's renewal guidelines. We don't think CVA should be treated any better than similarly situated charter schools, and we certainly don't think CVA should be treated any worse. Adhering to DPI's 3-year renewal guideline is an important, useful, and easy way in which the board can ensure that it is acting consistently and not in an arbitrary or capricious manner, which could create legal risk for the state board. CVA presents a textbook example of a school that gets a 3-year renewal of its charter. Under the 3-year renewal guideline, pictured here, a 3-year renewal is recommended where there have been compliance issues in the past 3 years that show a pattern of unresolved or consistent issues. As you've already heard from OCS, we have that here. There's no denying it. Reasonable people can differ about whether OCS and CVA could have worked things out better, but there is no denying that CVA has compliance issues. While the existence of the other 2 conditions would also support a 3-year renewal recommendation, CVA actually does not have these problems. There is no finding that CVA has been unable to provide sound audits for the immediately preceding year, and CVA is not currently on financial non-compliance disciplinary status. Moreover, CVA's academic outcomes, as we will later discuss, have been comparable to the school district, and CVA has met growth for 2 of the preceding 3 years. Next slide, please. Look, we recognize the stickiness of the committee being asked to examine the review board's work. It's a bit awkward, perhaps, because the committee understandably respects the work of the review board and of the DPI staff as well, of course. However, as a legal matter, the committee and the board are not to give the review board's recommendation for non-renewal any deference with respect to this appeal. Now, we don't say that out of any disrespect toward the review board. It's simply the law. In the law, sometimes, though not here, a reviewing committee is supposed to give some deference to the lower decision. For example, sometimes the lower decision can only be reversed if it was arbitrary and capricious. That is, there was no rational basis for the decision. Sometimes the decision can only be reversed if there was no substantial evidence for the decision. That is, no reasonable person would have accepted the evidence. Sometimes the decision can only be reversed if the factual findings upon which the decision was based were clearly erroneous. But none of those apply to this appeal. Instead, this appeal is governed by the de novo standard of review, and the board has the final decision-making authority. But what does de novo review mean? Next slide, please. De novo review is a very familiar concept in the law. When there is an appeal, like we have here, de novo review of the lower decision means that the reviewing committee gives absolutely no deference to the lower decision. Instead, the reviewing committee considers the matter anew and freely substitutes its own judgment for that of the lower tribunal. So while one might be tempted to consider the fact that the review board recommended non-renewal, it is actually not a fact for this committee to consider. Think of it like this. The committee's consideration of this matter and this appeal is a do-over. That doesn't say anything bad about the review board. It's just the way renewal appeals are handled. I didn't represent CVA at the time of the review board's decision last month, so this opportunity for a do-over provides the school an opportunity with my assistance to approach the matter differently in front of a new set of eyeballs. That's de novo review. You might think that the easy course of action would be to simply go along with the review board's recommendation, but that's not de novo review. Next slide, please. Turning now to the history and background of CVA, it was established in 1997 as one of North Carolina's first charter schools, and, as I've noted, it is Lenoir County's only charter school, meaning it is the only public school alternative for families. CVA is a Title I school that serves an extremely high percentage of economically disadvantaged students. Over 80% of the students are economically disadvantaged students, compared to 51% in all of North Carolina. The student population is comprised of nearly 100% African American students. It's a K-8 school in Kinston that is very attractive to families who seek academic outcomes with smaller class sizes. There are an average of 17 students per class. Kinston has a high rate of crime, and CVA students come from challenging backgrounds. Yet CVA gets results that are commendable, considering the challenging circumstances. I'm going to pause for a moment and ask CVA's principal, Ms. Jessica Jones, to chime in here and tell you a little bit about CVA students and their challenging circumstances. Ms. Jones?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vogel. If you could go to the next slide, please. While CVA is considered a low-performing school and proficiency may be less than desired, CVA takes into account the majority of new students enter with pre-existing gaps in learning by at least 2 grade levels or more. In 2022-2023, 87% of newly enrolled students were at least 1 grade level behind. In this past school year, about 82% of newly enrolled students were at least 2 grade levels behind. While pre-existing learning gaps are challenging to fill within a school year, CVA strives to promote and achieve academic growth. From 2015 until now, CVA has demonstrated high growth, with growth scores of 80 or higher while serving one of the highest EDS populations in the county. Currently, the formula that is used to designate performance grades to North Carolina schools accounts for 80% for proficiency and only 20% for growth, placing CVA in a category of low performing. However, as the state progresses to revise the school performance calculation to account for more growth, CVA, along with many other schools, may very well lose the label of being continually low performing schools in due time. Compared to other K through 8 schools in Lenoir County with similar demographics, CVA had the third highest growth in 2022 and 2023, while serving the county's fifth highest EDS population of 81%. In addition, CVA achieved a higher growth score than 2 of 3 public schools in the county that had an SBG of C or better. 9 other Lenoir County elementary and middle schools have a school performance grade of D of F or of D or F. CVA has remained within the 5% limit of comparability with the local LEA for the past 2 years and years prior to the pandemic, and has had a higher proficiency for the EDS subgroup than the local district for the past 3 years. Analysis of comparison data between CVA and the local LEA reflect signs of academic comparability, progress, and sustainability. Over the span of 27 years of operation, CVA has been noteworthy for high growth. We can go over to the next slide.
I think, Ms. Jones, let me take it from here. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, this paints a very important picture for the committee. While there's certainly room for academic improvement, as Ms. Jones just described, CVA is at the high end of schools in Lenoir County. It's no wonder then that CVA has been an educational option for Lenoir County families for nearly 30 years. No one likes a bragger, but sometimes you have to toot your own horn, and CVA has been recognized numerous times in the last several years for its academic growth. Most recently, CVA won an Academic Growth Award in 2022, and CVA was recognized for being within the top 50% in EVAS growth for 2022 and 2023. CVS is clearly an important public school alternative for Lenoir County families and students, has been earning recognition for growth in recent years, and CVA is doing all of this under challenging circumstances, as Ms. Jones described for the committee. Next slide, please. As Ms. Jones noted, there have been very nice figures with respect to comparability with the local LEA. These are academic comparability and growth figures that come directly from a slide that was presented last month by the Office of Charter Schools to the Review Board. The green percentage figures indicate that CVA's grade level proficiency was within 5% of the school district in the last 2 school years. And CVA accomplished this while coming out of the COVID pandemic, of course, a once-in-a-century event that we know took somewhat of a toll on student achievement and mental wellness. Next slide, please. If we take a longer-term view of CVA's academic outcomes, we see quite a nice history of growth and exceeding growth. This information is taken from the online North Carolina school report cards. It shows that CVA met academic growth in 5 of the last 6 recorded years, and CVA met academic growth or exceeded academic growth in 7 of the last 8 recorded years. That's a strong record of growth that deserves attention. CVA is a school that is putting academics first, and it's obviously getting results. There is still work to be done, but considering the extremely high percentage of economically disadvantaged student population and the challenges such students bring to the classroom, we can appreciate the job being done at CVA and understand why families have chosen CVA for nearly 30 years. Not every elementary school and middle school in Lenoir County can put up a slide like this. Next slide, please. Let's pivot and discuss the charter renewal process. The renewal process is completed over a period of 2 years, and it consists of a self-study, a renewal site visit with interviews, and the Charter School Review Board review before recommendations are made to the State Board of Education. As you heard a short time ago, the Office of Charter Schools proposed findings of fact state that CVA submitted its letter of intent to renew way back on July 8th, 2022, nearly 2 years ago. CVA submitted its renewal self-study a few months later on November 28th, 2022. A renewal visit from the Office of Charter Schools did not take place at the school until May 3rd, 2023. The renewal visit consisted of a tour of the school, brief classroom observations, and multiple interview groups, including staff, board members, administration, as parents. OCS's presentation went over this, but I want to go over it again and say that the renewal visit feedback from OCS was very good. It included various items of board governance reforms that were needed. Those board governance reforms, can you go back, please? Thank you. Included things such as, 1, the board member consider adopting a formal evaluation tool for the school's administrator as a best practice. 2, the board consider yearly governance training for all members and consider adding board strengthening exercises. 3, the school should verify the school's policies that specify that you may not accept employees or volunteers from the SBE revoked license list. 4, the school should update the school's website with approved board meeting minutes. And 5, it should ensure that the website explicitly states the exact date, time, and location of board meetings. These are all good board governance reforms. Following the renewal self-study and site visit and interviews, OCS staff began the process of compiling data to present to the review board. In November 2023, which was nearly 1.5 years into the 2-year renewal process, OCS placed SVA on track for a 3-year renewal term. Let me repeat that. In November, this past November, OCS placed CVA on track for a 3-year renewal term. And that was not a surprising decision, considering that it comports with OCS's 3-year renewal guideline. But what happened next was a little excessive, because 2 months later, OCS abruptly recommended non-renewal. Next slide, please. To be clear, you're not going to hear me refute the non-compliance findings of the Offices of Federal Programs and School Business with the Office of Charter Schools that OCS went over in its presentation. We will not be refuting that. Those folks were thorough, and they were looking out for the Treasury and for the taxpayers. That's their job, and it's an honorable pursuit. But I am going to suggest that, considering that the findings were virtually all resolved within the next few months, there was no need for OCS to advocate before the review board, and then again today before the committee, for non-renewal, especially when you consider the important academic growth shown by CVA students. Like this committee, I was not involved in what was going on at the time. I was just contacted by the school shortly after the review board's hearing last month, to be candid. So like this committee, I look at it with an outsider's perspective. And I think that OCS could have continued to work with CVA toward resolving issues of noncompliance without seeking non-renewal. After all, OCS did so with respect to its concerns regarding board governance. In December 2023, CVA was placed on governance non-compliance cautionary status relating to failed requests for historical board minutes. It addressed it, and a few months later, in March 2024, CVA was removed from that cautionary status. OCS did not place the school on any other cautionary status, not financial cautionary status or any other cautionary status. To be sure, other compliance concerns were raised in December 2023 regarding the 21st Century Program, loan documents, and other things. In fact, there was a settlement agreement that resolved those alleged financial liability items relating to the 21st Century Program. None of those concerns required an abrupt shift to non-renewal, though. Ultimately, CVA did not pay the 21st Century settlement amount by the due date, and I'm here to tell you that that was wrong. I've told the CVA board it was wrong, and the hope that OCS would agree to some revised payment schedule was not a reason to miss the payment deadline. If CVA's charter is renewed, it will repay OCS by the end of this month. But the point remains that these are issues that can be worked through with assistance and support from OCS. They did not, and still do not, justify non-renewal. Next slide, please. CVA achieves academic outcomes, but it has work to do. The first step is to acknowledge that it has internal control and compliance letdowns. The board consists of a group of proud people, but they have swallowed their pride as they must. On behalf of CVA, I can say that the school made mistakes. One obvious mistake was not repaying the money with respect to the non-compliance findings related to the 21st Century Program that I just discussed. If the school is renewed, the payment will be made by the end of the month. I've informed the board that this must get done. To the extent there are any outstanding requests for information or corrective actions from OCS, the school will respond and take those corrective actions. Doing so might require CVA to do a better job of cultivating and nurturing its relationship with OCS. The relationship between regulator and regulated entity does not have to be adversarial. It's in the interest of the children and the taxpayers that CVA work more closely with OCS. Clearly, CVA needs qualified operations staff to implement its non-academic functions. Some operations staff have been and will be eliminated, and then they will be replaced with qualified operations staff and/or the assistance to be obtained from an outside contractor. Now, earlier I mentioned the need for there to be accountability at the highest level of the school and for the insertion of leaders with relevant expertise. There will be an immediate, albeit orderly, transition of board members. The board has agreed to this. CVA is committed to spending the next few months recruiting, educating, and bringing on new board members to replace some or all of the existing board members. And finally, the checklist for reforms includes an acknowledgement that CVA needs outside assistance from subject matter experts. CVA has obtained a proposal from Charter Success Partners, which you have in the record here. That proposal would have Charter Success Partners assist the school in overhauling, overseeing, and managing CVA's financial business. This is long overdue. Additionally, our law firm has provided an engagement letter, which is part of the record, to serve as board attorney and provide counsel on day-to-day operational compliance issues. The board will hire both entities if renewed. Next slide, please. So, Mr. Chairman, to conclude my remarks, I'd like to remind the committee that Lenoir County Public Schools is a low-performing district, and CVA is Lenoir County's only charter school. CVA is serving an economically disadvantaged population, and it's meeting comparability and growth. Within Lenoir County, CVA distinguished itself by achieving the third highest growth score compared to elementary and middle schools in the county. Its compliance shortfalls are unfortunate, but fixable. You can't show me a charter school or school district, for that matter, that has a 100% compliance record. Indeed, it appears many school districts are struggling themselves these days with budget shortfalls due to failures to adequately plan for the sunsetting of ESSER funds. That's a financial problem too, a very big one, but it is fixable, and school districts and school boards are working to fix it. CVA can work to fix its problems too. CVA should have repaid the money regarding the 21st Century Program, and it will do so by the end of the month if renewed. Compliance starts with leadership. Leadership that conducts oversight and asks the right questions. CVA's board will undergo a transition of its membership to ensure that it has leaders with the necessary experience to oversee the school and to instill a culture of compliance. Qualified operations staff will be hired. Moreover, financial internal controls will be reformed and implemented by charter success partners. Board governance and day-to-day operations compliance will be supported by our law firm. Things are going to change immediately for CVA, as they should. To summarize, CVA is the only charter school in a low-performing county and is achieving student outcomes. Its compliance issues are fixable. It must and it will make compliance reforms. With respect to its renewal request, it fits squarely within the 3-year renewal guideline, and it should therefore be renewed for 3 years. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vogel, and thank you for your remarks and the remarks of your principal. At this time, I would ask Ms. Becerra if she has any comments in form of rebuttal, or would like to add any other comments?
Yes, thank you. Okay, I did want to clarify a few things. As Mr. Vogel points out, this is a de novo review, which requires your panel, your board, to consider the matter anew and freely substitute its own judgment. I would ask that the panel pay close attention to the materials that have already been submitted in terms of the compliance history and fiscal monitoring history of CVA. And then I also wanted to clarify a few things, because I think there is some misunderstanding regarding the role of OCS. First of all, in regards to the change in the recommendation status for non-renewal, although the renewal process starts 2 years prior to a renewal recommendation, it is a 2-year process, that is accurate. Recommendations for renewal for any renewal school do not take place until October 2023, or the October prior to the renewal year for any school. And this is because the Office of Charter Schools must wait for state accountability data to be authorized and approved by the State Board of Education. So while the school did receive a 3-year recommendation in October of 2023, when we issue our recommendations, we also make all schools, we provide communication that allows them to understand that recommendations are subject to change. OCS makes recommendations for renewal, whether it's a 10-year, 7-year, 5-year, 3-year non-renewal, as facts are known at the time. And when we made the recommendation at the November meeting, we did not have the reports and the monitoring findings from school business or from federal programs, which were then given to the Charter Schools Review Board starting in December and progressed all the way through until their final recommendation in May. Renewal schools are normally given 1 time, maybe 2 for a non-renewal, to present in front of the Charter Schools Review Board. In this case, Children's Village Academy presented in November. Their renewal recommendation was changed in January. They were given additional opportunities to present, including in February and May, and their vote was delayed to allow CVA to respond to findings and to ensure their attendance at the May meeting. So it is OCS belief that we have worked very hard to make sure that their Their presentations are heard, that their arguments regarding their desire for a 3-year were heard, and that those were presented in front of the Charter Schools Review Board. I will also, of course, remind the panel that the Office of Charter Schools provides recommendations based on renewal guidelines. We do not vote or make the final renewal placement for a school. That lies with the Charter Schools Review Board. If we look at the renewal guidelines for a non-renewal, first of all, they're found in statute, and they include the things which were stated in the motion by the Charter Schools Review Board, which includes the failure to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management and material violations of the charter. The school and my presentation today was light on academics because the non-renewal recommendation was not based on academics. However, I will point out that in your de novo review today, the renewal guidelines allow the accountability data to be taken into account for the preceding 3 years. So today you saw data which was coming all the way from 2015, including 2015, 2017, and 2018. That data is not taken into account for renewal placements because the guidelines specify the immediately preceding 3 years, and those guidelines have been approved by the Charter Schools Review Board and previously by the State Board of Education. I would also like to point out that it's important for the panel to understand that a charter school operates based on a charter agreement that is given to a board of directors. A school that is high performing, making A's, outperforming the district, if that school does not have the foundation for a sustainable financial foundation to entrust and ensure that public taxpayers' money is spent appropriately, or does not have the governance ability, including a strong board of directors that understands how to govern a charter school, that school cannot function, regardless of academics. So while we have presented the academic data as it exists for CVA, and we have certainly heard Charter Schools Review Board members applaud the school for improvements they've made in academics, this non-renewal recommendation was based on governance and fiscal oversight concerns, and those have been documented very clearly over the last 6 or 7 months. And then finally, in regards to those findings of fiscal and governance noncompliance, our office put the school on governance noncompliance specifically for items such as public records. And the school did present information that they were going to work to improve those, and that we would continue to monitor those as a partner, not as an adversary, but as a partner to ensure that they had governance in place. However, the findings of federal programs, the settlement agreement, the $152,000 repayment, that information does not come from the Office of Charter Schools whatsoever. So our office, it was inferred that our office needed to work better with the school and maybe come to some type of an agreement with the school. That is not in our office's authority. All of the letters and reports which you will find on eBoard come from Mr. Alex Charles, the Senior Director of Federal Programs, Ms. Susan Brigman, Specialty Programs, Monica Pask, Fiscal Monitor, Wendy Buck, Program Administrator, Shirley McFadden, Jennifer Bennett, and Michael Jordan. Those staff members are DPI staff members from Federal Programs and School Business. Those are not in my division, and I do not have authority to contradict or to make any changes to their findings. Those findings are presented to the board in a completely objective and factual way, just as any other compliance findings from a division such as exceptional children's or school nutrition would be. And I think that hopefully that clears up some of the misunderstandings about my office's role and gives some insight into why the recommendation was changed and the timeline for which it was in which it was changed.
Thank you, Ms. Piquero. Mr. Vogel, do you have a rebuttal, or do you need to make more, or would you like to make more remarks at this time?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We spoke for a while, so I don't want to take up too much more of the committee's time. I'll just thank Ms. Piquero because the work that she has done and the work that others have done in DPI has been important work. And And I don't mean to suggest that she oversees the work of folks in the federal programs and school business office if she does not do so. And I certainly did not mean to suggest that anyone in those offices or Ms. Baccaro's office has done anything wrong. Rather, when I spoke about nurturing a relationship, I was putting the onus on the charter school to make sure that it has the right type of relationship with folks at OCS or federal programs or school business or throughout DPI. And I think that that is critical. I will note, though, that Ms. Baccaro noted various areas of noncompliance, which created this abrupt change in the view of whether CVA should be recommended for renewal. And that kind of is corroborative of what we presented to the committee, Mr. Chair, that while there was a governance cautionary status that was issued that had to be addressed and which was addressed, and that cautionary status was removed, there were no other cautionary status notifications. Yes, there were compliance issues that were noted just a few months ago in December, but rather than have this worked out through a cautionary status notification, it became kind of a piling on of reasons for non-renewal. All we're saying is, even when there are compliance issues, DPI's own 3-year renewal guideline states that it is appropriate to renew the charter for 3 years while the school is working on those compliance issues. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vogel. Thank you, Ms. Baccaro. At this time, we have an opportunity for my fellow board members to ask questions. So if there are any questions that Mr. Hall or Ms. Kamnitz have, open the floor to them to ask questions.
Chairman.
Yes, Mr. Hall.
Thank you, sir. First of all, I just want to say to both of the parties, for a fine example, both of you presented your work and supporting your organization in this particular matter. Counselor Vocal, I can see all the expertise in your background as you presented today. There's no doubt about knowledge of, and Miss Ashley in her work also. So I'm just saying thank you. Thank you for being thorough. Thank you for being understanding. And it was never, when I first read about it, it was never really in my mind it dealt with academics. It was more fiscal, more from that angle. But my question is this, sir, if I could ask, the $152,000 keep coming up. That figure keep coming up. And I understand that there's no rejecting it. It's not saying it should have been done. Why wasn't it done? That's my question. Wasn't there a settlement between the groups originally, but then for some reason it was never repaid? Why not?
Mr. Hall, thank you for your question. You're not going to hear an excuse from me for why that was not paid. I understand that there was a misunderstanding among the board as to whether there could be, would be, or was some tacit agreement or tacit understanding or implication or something that the school would have more time to make that payment. There had been a proposed payment schedule that would have allowed the school more time to make that payment. That proposal was not one that was, flatly rejected in an email back, but it certainly was not accepted. And if the school didn't know before May 6th that it needed to pay that back by the deadline, then it should have known on May 6th when it came up at the review board hearing. So I can just chalk it up to a misunderstanding, maybe being misinformed, maybe holding out false hope. That's a reason, but it's not an excuse.
Yes, sir. And can I go back a minute to those 1099? Those employees became 1099 employees in the original. Remember talking about that?
Yes.
how is that done? I mean, I'm confused about that. That's a federal thing. And designations and why would they put up?
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Can you repeat the question? That last
I'm
part?
just trying to figure out those employees that became 1099 private employers. That's what a 1099 is. How did that happen? What was it for? What was the reason for it?
Yeah, a few months ago, the school made that decision as a cost-saving measure, I believe. It was not a wise decision. It was not one that was thoroughly discussed. It wasn't a decision that was made on advice of counsel. It was a rash decision. It was one that was ultimately or I should say relatively quickly, it was reversed, and monies were paid back that weren't paid. So it was a short-term bad decision as a cost-saving measure.
Chairman, thank you, Attorney Vogel. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Thank you for your questions.
I do have, yes,
Ms.
Mr.
Pam?
Hall, are you finished?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Thank you. No, I just want to make sure I wasn't cutting you off. I do have several questions. There was a reference earlier in this hearing to a drop of enrollment at the school. I believe it's about 150 right now. Can someone address that for me? Has there been a drop over the last few years?
Ms. Jones, do you want to address enrollment?
Yes, ma'am. There has been a drop over the last few years. One thing that I can say is that we already serve a small population, so any amount of small few that leave has its impact. However, majority of our students that do not return, and on average, you're talking about maybe 10 to 15, it's either because they're relocating to other counties or other states or have some type of custodial issues, scenarios going on. But less than 10% of that, based on parents' feedback, is attributed to them not being satisfied with CVA. Also, the population in the city of Kinston and Lenore County has decreased significantly since 2019, 2020. So that's what I can say. And currently, we are at 138. Throughout this process, the situation with the non-renewal, even then, the students that withdrew, majority, 90% of that were students that actually relocated to other states or other counties that we do not serve.
All right, thank you for that. And while I have you, how long have you been the principal of the school?
Since 2015-16.
And before that, how did you come to the school?
Before that, I served as test coordinator and dean of students. And in prior years, I started back in 2006 as a third grade teacher.
Thank you. Thank you, that's helpful. So I'm going to come back to the 152,000 as well as the proposed agreement with Charter Success Partners and with the Vogel Law Firm. And I understand that there is not a healthy fund balance at the school. How are those funds going to be repaid? How are those funds going to be repaid? And then where's the money going to come from for these two contracts?
Well, the funds are going to be repaid as far as the 21st century money. The funds are going to be repaid from the school's current funds. And if the school requires additional funding to pay its personnel and whatnot, then it has already, taken some steps to look into obtaining a private loan. But it will not use private loan proceeds to repay the 21st century funds. Another option the school has is to sell real estate and use the proceeds of a real estate sale to pay. As far as Charter Success Partners and the Vogel firm, I mean, those monies will be paid only if this charter is renewed and the school can continue and pay those outside contractors that way.
All right, thank you. And I'm unfamiliar with Charter Success Partners. Can you give us a little bit of information? Not much, because I know we're running long here, but a little bit of information on that company.
Right. The proposal document is within the record. Let me see. Ms. Jones, can you speak a little bit to Charter Success Partners and what they do and what they would do? My understanding is they're a charter school focused outsource organization that assists charter schools with any number of issues, financial, operations, and the like. And the proposal that Charter Success Partners has provided the school is focused solely on financial internal controls, meaning payroll and all expenditures and the like. Ms. Jones, can you add some color commentary to that?
Yeah, that came highly recommended by our previous counsel and consultants. Generally, they help to manage the financial controls. In our particular case, we're looking for them to basically replace the current finance director as well as accountant, and to help us come in and manage and implement better, more effective financial internal controls.
All right, thank you. And then one final question. You've talked about a transition, a board transition, and also talked about hiring qualified administrative staff, which implies to me that perhaps there's a problem with qualifications of the current administration staff. So I'm wondering about the availability in Lenoir County of folks who are going to be qualified both for the board and the administrative staff.
Yeah, I think with respect to the board, we might need to look outside of Lenoir County for board members. We might call upon those in charter school associations who are aware of people who are eager and willing to help charter schools in rural counties. As far as high quality administrative staff, Ms. Jones I think is closer to the ground and might be aware of who's out there and who might be interested in working at the charter school. I'll turn it over to her to see if she has any comments on that, but I know that it also might be a little early at this point to kind of more specifically address the pool of available applicants. Ms. Jones?
So no doubt, considering all things, it may be a challenge as early on as now, but we're just going to pursue some heavy recruitment through advice from our counsel and consultants that we work closely with. We have worked with a consultant who's been very competent in referring or providing us with information for effective people that can go in some administrative roles, and it actually turned our attention to the Charter Success Partners. So we'll be looking or seeking additional advice from that particular consultant and our counsel to recruit more highly effective financial, human resource personnel to help assist with the transition and improvement of the school.
Thank you. That's all, Chair Blackburn.
Thank you, Ms. Kamnitz. I will not have any questions at this time. Most of the questions that I had were addressed by Ms. Kamnitz and Mr. Hall. I just have more of a comment. You've done a marvelous job through the years, and you had a good board, and so it's going to be critical that if you are granted a renewal, that you continue to recruit really good board members. So at this time, what I'm going to do is make a motion that we go into closed session so we can consult with our attorney regarding a decision. And so the motion is we go in closed session. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Ms. Kamnitz. Mr. Fafario, will you call the roll?
Mr. Blackburn?
Yes.
Ms. Kamnitz?
Yes.
Mr. Hall? Mr. Hall?
Yes.
Thank you. So we'll go into closed session at this time to consult with our attorneys. I would ask the people, so we will go off, so we as the board members will mute our phones and go off the video, but we ask that the rest of you stay on the call and then we will rejoin you. Does that make sense? Does everybody understand that?
And there is a call-in number for the board that was just resent by Mr. Fofaria. I would ask the board members to get out of this meeting because you need to have a confidential setting. So concern about you remaining in this WebEx meeting will be an issue. And then we can come back in when folks are ready. But just be aware, and the other folks it'd be appropriate for you to remain on so that if there are any additional questions, the panel can ask those.
Thank you, Ms. Schaefer. So my fellow board members, we will exit this and then we'll talk to each other and then come back.
Okay?
Thank you.
This meeting will remain open for the rest of you until we return, until the board.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Ms. Schaefer.
Okay.
Mr. Blackburn, I believe you
Yes.
have all of the board members back.
Thank you very much. Our first order of business, I make a motion that we come out of closed session. Do I hear a second? Mr. Fafario, will you call the roll?
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Ms. Kamnitz,
Yes.
Mr. Blackburn.
Yes. I'll now turn to Ms. Kamnitz for a motion.
Yes, thank you, Chair Blackburn. Upon de novo review, I move that this panel recommend to the full State Board of Education that the State Board uphold and concur with the decision of the Charter Schools Review Board not to renew the charter of Children's Village Academy for the following reasons. 1, failure to meet generally accepted standards of fiscal management. 2, violations of law. 3, material violations of the charter. And 4, other good cause identified, which specifically includes the failure to remedy in good faith the many legal and fiscal problems called to the school's attention. We have heard for the first time at this meeting a comprehensive plan to fix problems. However, given the long history of issues that could have and should have been addressed at a minimum over the past 2 years, this panel cannot in good faith base a recommendation upon assertion and promises of changes to come.
Thank you. Is there a second? Mr. Hall, would you like to second the motion?
I second that motion.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fafario, will you call the roll?
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Ms. Kamnitz,
Yes.
Mr. Blackburn.
Yes. The motion is unanimous and it passes. The panel's recommended decision will be reduced to writing and shared with the parties as soon as possible, but no later than the end of this week. The item will be up for discussion in the EICS committee on June 5th, 2024, and a final decision at the June 6, 2024 meeting of the State Board of Education, which you can attend at the Friday Institute on the campus of North Carolina State University or live stream using the YouTube link found on the State Board website. I now ask for a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion. Second.
Thank you. Motion and second. Mr. Fafario, will you call the roll?
Mr. Hall,
Yes.
Ms. Kamnitz,
Yes.
Mr. Blackburn.
Yes. Thank everyone for attending today. We appreciate your attention and thank you all for spending time with us today. The meeting is adjourned.